Well, hello, how'd you like that? The initial picture was the proud grandmother and new granddaughter. And the sounds were those of our grandchild, Imogene Frances Vivas. Imogene was born at 8:30 a.m. on June 6, 2008, at a great medical center in Brunswick, Maine. Joyce and I went up for that, and we had a very, very enjoyable time. The people there were very good to us and to our whole family. Imogene weighed in at 8.5 pounds and measured 20 inches in length. Welcome, Imogene. The first song, of course, is always, "Oh dear, what can the matter be?" And Imogene cries now for two reasons. She was only a few hours old when she made those noises. One is because she was hungry, and you can tell she's hungry because she moves her lips a lot. And then number two, when she needs her diaper changed. So luckily, she didn't cry for any other reason. So I taped that and brought it here. Now, Imogene was born just a few days before my wife and I's 47th wedding anniversary. So we had a nice weekend, and we came back here after that. So with that now, I'm going to go to the agenda, and I'm going to show you quickly what will be on tonight. There will be some more comments. I'll go back to comments as soon as I go through the agenda. And comments first, quite a little bit tonight, because I'm going to again address myself to students and educators. And if you have any students in your house and you want them to learn a little bit tonight, have them watch this, or tape it and have them watch it at some other time. Or educators. If you have any educators in your house, they should watch this for a while too. Notices, the budget update, I did get the numbers as promised from the financial director. I want you to know that before I give out any numbers on this program, unless I say they're different, I always get them from the financial director, and I'll go over those tonight. Planning and zoning update, there's quite a bit to talk about there. Possible revenue alternatives I talked about last week, but I want to reiterate those again this week at budget time, because I want you to realize that we don't have many alternatives here for getting new revenue into this town. So I'm going to go over that again this evening, and then hopefully, if I have enough time, I want to talk a bit about getting things done, and that would be a bit about the record of the existing Board of Selectmen, especially the 5 businessmen, and we'll talk about that. So with that, I'm going to go back to my comments again, and as you know, I like to use experiences from my own life and the lives of others to help make difficult points. Tonight, I will use both. If you have any students or educators in the house, have them pay attention to my tribute to Dr. Franklin D. Murphy. My first encounter with Dr. Murphy was in 1958. I was about 20 years old, and it was my first trip to Kansas University. Dr. Murphy was the first, when I first went to Kansas University, he was the chancellor of the university. I'll talk a bit more about that in a few minutes. But that's where I first ran into Dr. Franklin D. Murphy, and he made a big impact on me and my life, and that for, of course, my family and everybody else. But first, I want to relate my first encounter with Dr. Murphy in 1958. In 1958, I was working at G. Fox in Hartford, as I said once before on the program here when I showed some of my artwork, and I was accepted at the University of Kansas. And I took a bus trip from Hartford to Lawrence, Kansas, the home of Kansas University. It's about 30 miles outside of Kansas City, Kansas, and Kansas City, Missouri. I was halfway across country in this bus. I took the bus because I couldn't afford to go any other way. And a fellow got on the bus halfway out to Kansas, and his name was Ali Muzine. He was a foreign student from French Morocco. He was actually an Arab. So we sat together on the bus. He didn't speak the best English, and I didn't speak the best French, so we did communicate, and we found out we were both going to Kansas University, and we were both going there for the first time. When we got to St. Louis, Missouri, the bus stopped at it was early in the morning, probably 2 o'clock in the morning, It stopped at one of the normal bus stops they take where people can get a bite to eat. So we went into the cafeteria, and this foreign student from Morocco was with me, was refused service. It was the first time in my life I'd ever been with anybody who had been refused service for the color of their skin. Now, Ali wasn't an African American, he was an Arab, and he just couldn't understand why they wouldn't serve him. So of course he broke into tears. He was about 18 years old. He was over here as a special scholarship for foreign students, and I'll talk a bit about that more in a few minutes. And so finally they offered us to go into the kitchen to eat or take some food out. So I ordered a couple of hamburgers and Cokes, and we went out into the bus and we ate our meal. I had a lot of explaining to do between there and Lawrence, Kansas, about how things work here in America at that time, 1958 or so. When we got to Lawrence, Kansas, it was the day before the dormitories opened, and we didn't have anywhere to stay. It was like 2 o'clock in the morning, perhaps 3 o'clock in the morning, and I had made a reservation at a hotel in Lawrence, Kansas, and Allie didn't have any place to stay. So I said, well, come stay in a hotel. So we went to the hotel in Lawrence, Kansas, and we were refused, he was refused a room. So at that time, I said, who's the chancellor of Kansas University? And they told me it was Dr. Franklin D. Murphy. So I went to the phone book, I found his home number, and at 3 o'clock in the morning, I called Dr. Franklin D. Murphy, and I told him that there was a foreign student here to begin his studies at Kansas University, and they wouldn't let him into the hotel at 3 o'clock in the morning. So about a half an hour later, Dr. Franklin D. Murphy showed up, dressed immaculately as he always was, and he had a little chat with the people in the hotel, and he said, you know, you got to give this person a room. And they said, well, we don't have any rooms. So I said, well, he can share my room. And finally they relented, and they let Ali stay in my room for that night, and the next day, of course, he went to his normal accommodation in whichever dormitory the foreign students were in at the time. So my guest this week, as I try to make yet again a point to the educators, is Dr. Franklin D. Murphy. You should be able to see his picture there. Actually, that picture's in front of UCLA, but he was born in 1916. He died in 1994. He was a well-known educator, one of the best in the country. He was a businessman and an administrator. This is my second example in the last few weeks of an educator who was also a businessman. And I want to talk a bit about his background and his philosophy here, because I believe it can be applied to our problems in Winston. Dr. Murphy was a former practicing medical doctor, cardiology. He graduated with medical degrees and all kinds of honors and awards, Phi Beta Kappa and all that stuff. He was initially a professor and eventually dean of the Kansas University Medical School until his promotion to chancellor of the University of Kansas from 1954 to 1960. He was chancellor of the University of California at Los Angeles, UCLA, from 1960 to 1968, and chairman and CEO of the Times Mirror Publishing Company until his retirement in 1980, when he became a director of the company until his retirement in 1986. From that, and then a director emeritus until his death in 1994. During retirement, he became a major philanthropist in Los Angeles, serving on many philanthropic boards and commissions, channeling money towards his lifelong interests. During his career, he was also on the board of directors of many major companies like the Ford Motor Company and other major foundations, winning many national and international awards along the way. He had a great effect on Los Angeles during his lifetime. Noted biographer Margaret Leslie Davis has written in a book entitled The Culture Broker, Franklin D. Murphy and the Transformation of Los Angeles. Remember, this is an educator we're talking about, and businessman. This biography focuses on his entire career. I tried to find it in the library, and they didn't have it, so I don't have a copy to show you. Dr. Murphy was an active Republican, very active Republican, and had many battles with the administrations of governors, George Docking at the time, 1958, and Democrat in Kansas, and Ronald Reagan when he was governor of California, over the funding of budgets for the universities. The Franklin D. Murphy Sculpture Garden at UCLA is named after him, and Kansas University Murphy Hall and the Murphy Art and Architecture Library are named in his honor. Dr. Murphy dreamed of making his universities some of the nation's greatest. At the time, the governors were more interested in providing universities for their own students in their own state, and they didn't want to spend a lot of money on making their universities into international type cultural places, whereas Dr. Murphy did. So he had some of the nations. He wanted his universities to be some of the nation's greatest, and he made no bones about that. So he was always in with these governors fighting for more money in his budget, similar to what we have to do in our town. And he needed a lot of money to accomplish this. He wanted to expand physical plant. He wanted to expand library holdings. He wanted to add technical and scientific equipment. He wanted to increase salaries and benefits for professors and support staff in an attempt to attract and maintain the best and expand the best professors he could get, and he wanted to keep them there. And he wanted to expand the academic research. When billionaire John Paul Getty died in 1976, he bequeathed more than $750 million in stocks to the Malibu Museum in California. At the time, reported to be a sum larger than all the combined endowments of all the other museums in the nation. Dr. Murphy was chosen to outline an ambitious plan for what would eventually become the Getty Center, one of the nation's great institutions dedicated to preserving Western art and culture. He was questioned by some who feared that the sinking fund that he would set up. What he did was he took most of the money that it was given, bequeathed by John Paul Getty, and he put it into a, surprise, surprise, sinking fund that would, in the future, help them build the new Getty Center, which was $1 billion challenge. So he set up a sinking fund. He put most of John Paul Getty's money in that. It grew over the years with, well invested, and it grew over the years, and eventually they did use the money to build the new $1 billion center. There were people who questioned him about that and said, wouldn't we better off spending the money on the day-to-day running of the museum rather than putting it in a sinking fund for the future? And he stuck to his guns, and he chose to establish and maintain his sinking funds, which turned out to be a wonderful decision. As a corporate leader, Murphy channeled numerous. He was so frustrated by these governors and not being able to get money, although he did stay 6 or 8 years as chancellor of each university. He was so frustrated that he said, what I'll do is I'll go out and I'll get in business, and I'll be the CEO of a corporation, and I will get on as many boards as I can in America, and I will try to funnel money to the places where I think it will be best used. So what he did was he got out. He became CEO of the Times Mirror Corporation, and he got on all these boards, cultural boards, business boards, and everything, and he began to funnel money towards these institutions. UCLA, as you probably know, has grown tremendously. The University of Kansas is probably triple what it was when he was there, and he was very successful at getting money to these institutions. So here's a guy who was an educator. He also taught, in the Kansas City Med School and both of the universities. He taught courses while he was chancellor as well. And as a corporate leader, Murphy channeled numerous philanthropic contributions into cultural institutions of his choosing. The most exciting thing of all, says Dr. Murphy at the time, is the exploration of new, interesting, and beautiful things. So I want to say here that I've shown you two examples now of two of the chancellors that I met and had experiences with at the University of Kansas. Now, let me say something. When Dr. Murphy was first at the University of Kansas, there was a lot of segregation in the town. And when people like Wilt Chamberlain or any of the great black athletes they had at the time wanted a haircut, they had to go to Kansas City. And most of them didn't have cars at the time. They wanted to go to a restaurant, they couldn't go into the town. If they wanted to go to a movie, they couldn't go into the town. If they wanted to do any of that kind of thing, they couldn't do it. They were segregated. They had their own fraternities on the campus, both the men fraternity, the women the sorority. So what Dr. Murphy did, I found out later after my experience with him, and I got to know him better, and the stories on the campus were legendary. He went to each of these places very quietly, and he said to the movie people, theaters, if you don't allow these people into these theaters, we will set up a theater on the campus free for our students. And then he went to the barbers and he said, if you don't give haircuts to these people, we will set up a barbershop on campus and we will give haircuts free to all. And he went to the restaurants and he said, if you don't allow these people to come into your restaurants, we'll set up restaurants on the campus. And it will be very difficult for your business. So here's a man who did things. He did get involved in business, and he did get involved in politics, and he's well remembered to this day. So that's my message to both the students in town, and if you believe something can be done, get out and get it done, and to the educators in town, help us raise money. Now here it's easy. Here, the only thing you have to do to help us raise money is encourage people to adopt these developments that are trying to get into our town. Be positive, be proactive, say things positive, write a letter, say things in public, you leaders. And now, don't forget, we want to make sure that these things are done properly, and they follow the rules, and they pass the boards and commissions, and all that. So we're not asking anybody to take any shortcuts here. What we do need, though, is people to be active, like Dr. Murphy or W. Clark Wesco, who I mentioned last time, and let's get out there, let's get these things funded, let's get money in to run our schools properly. They are 50 to 60% of our budget. It isn't going to get any easier, it's only going to get worse. So let's concentrate on working as a team together with the town as businessmen to get these developments accepted and to make the developers feel at home and comfortable in our town like Franklin D. Murphy did with all the people that came to his university in Kansas to help the university be more successful. So that's my little view from that. Now we'll go to the notices. There will be, as I said last time, there will be a special town meeting at the Gilbert School on July 7, 2008, and at 7 p.m. The subject will be the explanation of the 2005 capital projects resolution. The finance director and bond experts will be there to answer any questions, and that's always helpful. You're going to be talking right to the people who have the expertise to answer you, and we'll be very, very pleased to have them there. The referendum to vote on the issue will be held, if as planned, July 12, 2008. I got that from the town hall. It could change at the meeting, but if it does, we'll know about it in plenty of time. And it will be held in the town hall, P. Francis Hicks room, from 8 to 8. Not at the Gilbert School, not at the Pearson School, but in the P. Francis Hicks room in the town hall. There will be signs up downtown pointing you in that direction. The Friends of Main Street, I noticed in the paper, has rescheduled its annual meeting to June 23rd at 6:30. I thought that might happen because it kind of conflicted with the selectmen meeting that's going to be on the day when they wanted to have it. So they've changed it to June 23rd at 6:30 at the Gilson Cinema Cafe. There will be an awards ceremony, free buffet, and social hour, followed by the business meeting and election of officers. Anyone that wants to join the Friends of Main Street can attend If you want more information, call 860-738-3351. I got that out of the newspaper. It's probably the Friends of Main Street office, but 860-738-3351. And I think the buffet and all that lasts about an hour or so, and then I think they start their formal meeting an hour or so into that later, but I'm not positive. Okay. Next, I want to point out here that the biologist Ethan Nadeau found a good, well-established population of eastern pond mussels in Highland Lake over the last few days. He dove into 9 areas of the lake with his scuba diving outfit, and of the 9 of the 10 locations that he searched at Highland Lake had these pond mussels in them. The first found since 1959. I think last year somebody at the state, some biologists said, hey, we think there's some pond mussels in there, and we found one in 1959. So they went and they did this search when the water warmed up recently, and they did find some. So that is kind of significant for Highland Lake. The dicot application that retards but does not kill the invasive Eurasian milfoil weeds must be reviewed and a decision made concerning its application. We talked about this once before. Every year they try to put some of this dicot in, and it doesn't kill the milfoil, but it does maim it, so to speak, knock it down, and then the roots are still there and it grows back over time. So it's not a total solution, but it does help to a certain extent at the lake. Next week, June 19th, 2008, I will feature the June 16, 2008 Board of Selectmen meeting as usual, as I do after every Selectmen meeting. There's one coming up on Monday. The following week, June 27, 2008, I will feature my second quarterly Selectmen report. You know, remember I had a Selectmen report. I would say I would do it every quarter where we look at the voting records and things of the Selectmen. This report will contain Selectmen motion records as well as voting records. Please tell interested people and others to watch or record the program for future viewing to gain an understanding of how the different individuals and parties, political parties, think. So this will be all taken from the minutes of the meetings, will be very accurate. And if you're interested in this kind of thing, and some people aren't, then I would encourage you to watch this, record it, and see it later, or get a copy from down here, or get a hold of me, and I'll make you a DVD so you can see it at your convenience. Next, I want to point, and I put this in green on purpose, and I think I made a mistake, so you probably won't be able to read this, but I'll read it to you. On July 10th, write that down, July 10th, and I will have a couple signs up around town, and I may send a letter or two out, but I'm not positive about that. I will read and comment on my 2006 green paper to the Inland Wetlands and Watercourse Commission and Selectmen regarding the Aurora Rosa development. I wrote a letter to the Inland Wetlands in the public hearing and submitted it into the record. I want to read it to you at that time, and it has a lot of good information in it about Highland Lake, some of the concerns we have up there at the lake, and this paper was basically a request to everybody to get some revenue into town to help fix these problems. Part-time Highland Lake residents are invited to watch. Any residents can watch, of course, but I'm especially doing this for the summer residents, the people who aren't here during the year and haven't seen my program and don't understand what's in this green paper. So this program is to gain a better understanding of the mounting problems at the lake and how to plan for their future resolution. Please spread the word to all summer residents. So pass the word around. If they're interested, they can watch. If they're not, that's c'est la vie. On July 17th, 1 week late, I will feature the July 7th Selectmen meeting and 205 Capital Projects Town meeting results. Those will be combined in that meeting. Okay, so that's that. I've given you the advance notice on this so you can spread the word around to everybody, and I will show you, because I personally believe, this is one of the reasons I got involved in this, whole effort 2-3 years ago and started doing the study of the town because everybody was talking about Highland Lake and trying to get money from the town to do things at Highland Lake, catch basins and other things, dike-quat and all that. And I rapidly realized that there wasn't much money in the town to get, and that we needed revenue. I went out looking for sources of revenue, and I saw that these developments were trying to come to town, and it all made sense to me. So that's what I'm going to try to get across to these summer residents, like good facts about these developments, so they can make their own mind up what they think about it. Okay. It also has tax implications. My view is if we don't do something over the years to get the revenue in and help all these areas of town, we're going to have a lot of big bond issues coming up, because someday if we get a lot of problems at the lake and the lake starts filling up over a long period of time with silt and sand and other things, some of the bad aspects of the chemicals, then we're going to have to spend a lot of money to fix it. So I want to get that out now while we still got some time to do something about it, and a time to try to earn some money. Next, we'll talk about the budget. That's $32,325,856 proposed, 208, 209. 31 million is what it was in 31,982,344 in 207 and 208. That makes a difference of 343,552 increase. So that's 1.07% direct from the town hall financial director. The current tax rate, by the way, this means that our whole town has gone up in its expenses 1.07% from this year to the next year's proposed budget. That's darn good. That's darn good. Now, there was some confusion about this at the last election, at the last vote rather, and I'm trying to clear that up again this time for you. Current tax rate is 24.67 mils. That's adjusted for revaluation. The amount needed from taxes is $21,242,309 in 08 and 09, the proposed budget. In this year, the amount needed for taxes was $19,801,276 in 07 and 08. So that's an increase of $1,441,033. The proposed tax increase, we got the air conditioning on here and that's making noise, so I'm talking a little louder. I hope it's not too loud for you. But the proposed tax increase is 1.33 mils or 5.41%. And the reason that this is a higher number than the 1.07% is because this year we have less revenue in the budget. So we need to make up for that difference in we need to make up for that less revenue by getting more from taxes. So that's why you see that different. So if the budget is approved, if it goes to the town meeting and it passes there without any decrease, they can cut the budget at the town meeting, and they may do that, but I have to assume they're not going to do that because I haven't got a clue what they're going to do. The new tax rate will be 26 mils. Again, that's from the town hall. So it'll give us enough to do what we have to do. Now, I do want to point out to you one little quirk that is in there. It might be over your heads, and it's a little bit over my head to a certain extent. But when they do the amount to be raised from taxes, it's just not a simple mathematical division. They have to take into consideration a couple factors. Number one, when they go to get this amount needed from taxes, they know that about 97.1% of people will pay their taxes on time. The rest won't, for one reason or another. So there's a factor put in here when they go to do the mill rate to make up for that. And that's about 600, that's minus 622, plus rather, they add 622,929 to make up for that problem. And then there's some supplemental motor vehicle stuff that they subtract 238,000. So the net additions are 384,929, and that means the real net amount to be raised from taxes is 21,242,309. So that's just a little trick that's in there. Took me a little while to understand it. The finance director explained it to me, and he has a paper. If you want to really know how that works, go down and ask him. He'll give you a sheet of paper that shows the calculations and their sequence. And it's very helpful to anybody who's interested in that. I don't think the average person is too interested in that, but any mathematician or anybody in the financial business that's trying to calculate this stuff, that's why you'll see different number from everybody you talk to on TV or watch TV. I had one number I got from the finance director. Somebody else had a number that didn't take any consideration these things, and they're a little different, but it's a very minute amount, relatively speaking. Okay, now we're going to talk a bit about planning and zoning. Planning and zoning. A new member of planning and zoning will be appointed by the selectmen eventually. Last time I thought it would be sooner than it will be. It looks like they're putting that off for a while, so that hasn't been appointed yet, and I can't even tell you when it will be. When it is, I'll let you know. I'll probably read it in the paper sometime. That's where I get most of my information. There was a planning session only meeting. The way planning and zoning works, they have one regular meeting a month and they have one planning session once a month, and they're probably about 2 weeks apart. So there was a planning session only meeting held on Monday, June 9th, 2008. The next regularly scheduled meeting will be on Monday, June 23rd, 2008. So if you're interested in planning and zoning, plan on June 23rd. And I think that this probably it's going to be before this program is shown because I tape it a little early. But they did make an interested parties made taped the planning and zoning meeting that was held the other night, and that will be shown on channel 15 at 7 o'clock, maybe once or twice this week, and maybe even on Saturday or some other time on channel 13. But take a look at both 13 and 15 at 7 o'clock, and probably 15 during the week because other programs are scheduled, and then 15 at 7 o'clock if you're interested in watching that, or get a copy of the minutes. The minutes won't be ready until the middle of next week, because the person that does the minutes was off for 3 days this week. So you'll be able to get the minutes towards the middle of next week. Now, there's possibly good news here. Possibly. I always say possibly. You have to hedge everything when you talk about things in any town or city, never mind Winsted. But at the Monday, June 9, 2008 meeting, the Aurora Estates developer presented a new plan for a reduced number of units. They reduced it from 300 units to 225 units on 122 acres of land. Before, there were 300 units on 122 acres. So that was proposed by the developer, and from what I gather from the newspaper, it was received very well. A lot of loose ends yet. May never happen, may not be approved, may be withdrawn by the developer, may not be approved by planning and zoning, but we're going in the right direction here. The configuration presented was 100 age-restricted homes and 125 unrestricted units. There is some contention in town about whether we should have all age-restricted units or some unrestricted units for people starting out families and people starting out careers that want to have new homes and want to live in Winsted and go to Winsted schools. So that's the number that they were talking about that night. It may change the next meeting, but that's what was there. So 125 unrestricted units. Unrestricted means they can have children. Don't confuse unrestricted with the lowest cost housing. That's not true. The housing will not be inexpensive. It won't be low cost housing. It will be unrestricted units, which means they may have children in there. So, and children that will attend our school systems. With they also proposed amenities such as ball fields, a clubhouse, and an outdoor pool. I didn't go to this meeting. a little too much for me because I was just getting back from my trip to Maine. But I did get this information out of the Waterbury Republican. I checked with a few people that had been to the meeting. It seemed fairly accurate. So once I do see the Planning and Zoning meeting on TV, if I see anything startling, I'll let you know. The developer has stated that he will file his appeal on the May 27th, 2008, denial of the 300 condo proposal. Remember I told you last time that it was kind of bad news that the Planning and Zoning had denied the 300 condo proposal, and I didn't think that was too good for the town. I thought it could have been handled in a better way by the town. I mentioned that last time. Well, it looks like it's a little rosier this time, and still got a long way to go, but we're going in the right direction. The new revised proposal, 225 units, if agreed, would amount to a settlement of any coming court action, the attorney for the developer said at the meeting. So they will be filing a court action, well, anyway, first I want to say congratulations to the town officials, the developer and his team, and the Planning and Zoning Commission and the selectmen for attempting to resolve this issue in the best interests of all. That's the way it should be. That's the way we should be working together as a team, and including all the people. I don't have time tonight, but maybe another night I'll tell you a trick we use in troubleshooting and to resolve that issue when we go around the world. That was taught to me over the years. Although this has been quoted in the paper as a tremendous step forward, by one, I got an alternate member, and about right by the zoning commissioners, there are still some hurdles to clear, said the newspaper. The developer's attorney was quoted as saying that the $21,830 fee owed by the developer for the last application may be balanced by credits which the developer believes it has with the town. So the jury's out on that. That was brought up by the people on the Planning and Zoning Commission that they would like them to pay that, and that was the answer the developer gave. That's something that has to be looked into by the town manager and the finance director and everybody else, and they have to resolve that. The attorney for the developer, also encouraged the commission to consider the benefits of the new sewer lines that the developer will build at his expense. I want you to understand that when people come in to our enterprise corridors and all, the town doesn't usually pay for the water and sewer to be run to their property unless it is already there. They usually have whoever's coming into that area pay to run the sewer and water to their property, just like we would in our homes if we didn't have it. So, so there will be a big benefit not only to the town, but more so to anybody who wants to run a business in the corridor. It'll be easier to get people into the corridor if there's already water and sewer that's there, that's been put in and paid for by the developer. So the town won't have to pay anything. The new person will probably just have to run it from the center of the road up to their building, which is normally the case if the water and sewer are already there. And just like this developer, in order to get it to his property, he's got to run it all the way down from the town garage, maybe a little less, to get the sewer up to his property, and he's going to pay to do that, and he's going to run it almost to the Torrington line, and same with the water. The water is now run down to the garage of the state, where you get your motor vehicle license, but the developer will have to extend it all the way down. If both of his projects are approved, he will pay the cost of that. So the commissioner, the attorney, has asked the commission to consider that in their decision, that this is a big benefit to the town and future industry that comes down the corridor or other developments in the corridor. So this will lessen the cost to the town and other developers wishing to use the land along the corridor. The plan of conservation and development was also discussed and work will proceed toward the initial step that will hopefully be making the minimum necessary changes. I've talked about this in other programs and people confused it, so I'm going to talk a bit more about it tonight. I will take the responsibility for not having explained it in a way that a very small number of people couldn't understand, but we'll do that again tonight. So the work will proceed toward the initial step that will hopefully be making the minimum necessary changes to have the POCD adopted by the state so the developer can run the sewer to the presently approved development and possibly any development approved in that area in the future, which might be the Aurora Estates development if it's approved in one form or another. Now, I want to explain a bit about this plan of conservation and development. And again, I will try my best to get this message across. It's not easy to understand, and I'm going to make another attempt at this tonight. The plan of conservation and development, we call here the POCD. We have a plan of conservation and development for the town of Winchester, and we need to get it readopted. And in order to get it readopted, some things have to happen. The town of Winchester had 10 years from the date of acceptance of its plan of conservation and development, which was 1994. It had 10 years from 1994, which would be 2004, to update its POCD, its plan of conservation and development. The town did not achieve that date. To this date, it has not been updated. And that's not good, because when we want to do things like the development, and doesn't have every little particular, like running the sewer line up to the development. We have approved the development as a town for 456 units and a golf course, but we don't right now at this particular time. We are not able to grant the running of the sewer line up from where it ends now on the corridor up to the property. So we do have in our planning, conservation and development, and I'm not an expert on this. If you've got any questions, go see the director of planning, and or talk to the town manager about it. We didn't achieve the date. We do need to make some changes to the plan that we have now and get them off to the state so they can get an update to our plan so we can live with it. There were previous attempts to do the work in-house within our own resources within the town, and there were other attempts to gain enough funding over the years to have the work done outside by outsiders like consultants and people like that. For one reason or another, these attempts did not succeed. Either they didn't get funded by the selectmen, or we did have one planning manager leave, and town planner, and he wasn't, the job was empty for a year or so. I'm not blaming anybody here, but there were things that happened, and these attempts did not succeed. That's why we still haven't upgraded this plan to the state's satisfaction. Although minimal progress has been made, I think there has been some money allocated one way or another to take pictures, aerial photos of the town. That's one of the first steps in getting the plan together and updating it. But shortly after being elected, the new selectmen agreed to fund about $15,000. This was in December, and I think about like $15,500. I don't have the exact number, I apologize, or so, to allow the plan of conservation and development changes to be made, so to submit to the state to allow the sewer to go to the developments along the Route 8 corridor. So that's $15,500 that's sitting there right now, and if it's appropriated by the end of this month, which I'm sure it will be, then they can start working with these consultants they've chosen. They've chosen some consultants now to work on this. I think they're down in another part of the state. I don't know exactly where. But and then another $15,000 is in the proposed budget. Now, I do want to say that when the selectmen gave them the first $15,500 in December, when they moved it from elsewhere in the budget over to planning and zoning, they did expect it to be done on the plan so they could get the sewer up to these developments. That's their first priority, and the town's first priority. So another $15,000 is in the proposed budget that you'll be going to vote on. If this vote gets passed, for the 5.41% increase, then they will get another $15,000. So that'll bring them up to about $30,500 to work on this plan of conservation and development. And a state grant has been applied for, and I'm told that that could be approved fairly soon, if at all approved. It could be approved fairly soon. It could be up to as much as $25,000. Now, they don't expect to be much more than that because there's a lot of people in the state applying for these funds, and there's only so much money available. So I think it's 500,000 is available, and there's X number of towns and cities applying for these grants. So it'd be about 25,000. So if they get that, and that 15,000, you're up to 40, and then the other 15 and a half, you're up to 55,000 or so over the next year or so to be able to work on this plan. Now, the major revenue producing need at present is definitely the sewer to the development approval so the developer can plan accordingly. And I want to make a point here. I don't think I'm going to get through everything tonight that I wanted to because of my long talk about Dr. Murphy, which I think was very critical here, is that you can't wait until the developer gets his, when we run projects, we don't wait until the developer gets his approval from the DEP or from the Armored Corps engineers. What we try to do is get our responsibilities done. Give the developer our approvals as soon as possible. And there's a good reason for that. They might even be a year ahead of when he gets his final approvals from the state. And that's because he has other things to do. He has to line up funding, he has to get a lot of other ducks in a row, contractors, and he has to know that he has these permits. And that when he gets farther down the line, he'll get there faster, and we'll get these developments in faster, and we'll get our revenue faster. So it's very important that as soon as possible we get the permission to be able to run this sewer, so we can tell him he has the permission and it's official, and the state agrees, and we're all in very good shape there. Now we now are going to work on the plan of conservation development with this $15,000. Get started. We've chosen, Planning and Zoning has chosen a contractor, a subcontractor to help, and they've appointed somebody to manage this as a committee a manager. And now we will now have to make a few relatively small changes to the plan to allow the sewer line to be extended from the enterprise corridor to the new developments, and request a modification to the state plan of development by submitting our updated plan as a basis to the state for adoption. So the point I was trying to make last time, which some people didn't pick up on, is that's what we really need to get the revenue into town. There are many other things we need here too. Now, we have been told by people that opinions on how much work is needed to gain this approval for the sewer line to be run to the development area down the corridor. When we already have permission, evidently, to run the sewer down the corridor and the pipeline, water pipe down the corridor, certainly the sewer down the corridor. But the opinion on how much work is needed to gain adoption vary. But the general consensus of the consultants, the selectmen, the state and county representatives, is that it is believed to be minimal and can be done inexpensively and relatively soon. In some cases, I don't think we are one of those cases, but in some cases you just have to take the plan you have to go to the state and say, we don't need any changes to this now, please adopt it. And in some cases they will adopt it. Now it just happens that Winston does need some changes to get this sewer up to the development. So they'll have to figure out what they are with this $15,000 or maybe even a little of the next money that's approved, and then go and get the work done. Again, it is certainly our revenue producing should be the top priority. If you ask me, I say put your top priority on updating the POCD on revenue production. And there's no horse in the race right now besides this. Now, I did see in a paper where the planning and zoning people are also interested in upgrading the zoning in the town. You know, across the street from the city hall, we have zoning that's mainly industrial. I think they want to change that. But that isn't first priority, in my opinion. It may be in their opinion, but in my opinion, it isn't, because we're a long way off from getting any revenue from redoing the downtown area, a long way off. So that could be like priority number 2. And in our evolutionary steps, that could be like priority number 2, in my opinion. Again, it is certainly our revenue-producing top priority is definitely the developments at this stage of the game. I talked a bit about that last week. 2010 is the date that all plans must be current with the state, or there may be serious penalties to the town. Now that's where you have to have your whole town plan up to date, or that what you think you need to have up to date. It's what we think as a town we want to do. That's the real important thing. And then the state will look at it and make sure it's not totally out of sync with what they would like to see us do as a state. And then one way or another, they will make our plan current with their plan. So at present, we have 2 major priorities. One is to update the plan with modifications to allow us to gain adoption for the sewer as soon as possible to the Aurora developments. Most people don't think this is a big deal, and it can be done quickly and inexpensively. Number 2 priority is to ensure that our plan is updated in logical increments. Doesn't have to be done in one shot. It can be done in logical increments from 6 months periods to 6 month periods, and it must be current by the year 2010. Now, I'm starting to hear that certain things maybe have to be done before that, but that's not official yet, so we'll wait till it is official. So things can be done in logical instruments. That's what we call evolution, not revolution. We certainly don't want to wait to upgrade the whole plan to get the sewer up to these developments. That might take a year and a half for us to do that. So we need to take it in small, biteable, digestible chunks. My main view is the developments first. There may be some other areas in town where we can get good development money in rapidly. Maybe that should be second. And then somewhere around 3 or 4 should probably be the center of the town replanning, which I really think needs to be done. And but I just don't see how you're going to get much revenue out of that for 10 to 15 years. I could be wrong. So if anybody has heard this, you've got it, and you don't have any questions about it, just go see the town manager, see any of the selectmen. You'll get different versions from the minority than you will from the majority. Talk to both of them, get their views. Talk to the director of planning and the planning and zoning people themselves, and anybody you can to get the facts of what's happening. Okay, so with that, we're towards the end of the program. I didn't get to a couple of things I wanted to, but I do think I got across pretty much what I wanted to get across here is during the budget season. I do think the educators need to get more involved in getting this revenue in and being more proactive in stating so. And if any of them are against it, they should put that aside and help us get this revenue in to make it better for our schools and to save our schools and to save our seniors and to save ourselves. Thank you very much. I'll be back next week.